On October 28, 1943, at exactly 9 a.m., something happened that would change our understanding of physics forever. The USS Eldridge, a brand-new destroyer escort docked at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, vanished. Not slowly, not partially. The entire 300-foot warship, along with its full crew of over 200 men, disappeared from reality in a flash of greenish-blue light. Witnesses standing on the dock said the ship became completely invisible. Radar couldn't detect it. Human eyes couldn't see it. And then, in that same instant, the USS Eldridge reappeared 200 miles away in Norfolk, Virginia. Sailors there saw it materialize out of thin air, stay visible for a few minutes, then vanish again, only to rematerialize back in Philadelphia. When the crew emerged from that impossible journey, they were changed. Some were embedded in the metal hull of the ship, their bodies fused with steel. Others went completely insane, raving about seeing other dimensions. Several sailors vanished into thin air and were never seen again. For 80 years, the U.S. Navy has denied this ever happened. They've called it a hoax, a fabrication, the ravings of mentally ill witnesses. But the evidence says otherwise. Documents have surfaced. Witnesses have testified. Scientists have confirmed the theoretical possibility. And the Navy's own behavior, their desperate attempts to discredit every single person who's ever spoken about this, tells you everything you need to know. They're hiding something. Something so revolutionary, so dangerous, that they've spent 80 years covering it up. You're about to discover what really happened on that October morning in 1943. You're about to learn about the most successful and most horrifying experiment in military history. And you're about to understand why they can never, ever let this truth become common knowledge. But before we reveal the shocking details of what the Navy did to those sailors, if you want to uncover more hidden truths they're desperately trying to keep buried, subscribe to this channel right now and hit that notification bell. Because this story has been suppressed for 80 years, and the powers that be would love nothing more than to make it disappear again. Don't let them. Let's go. The year is 1943. World War II is at its absolute peak. German U-boats are terrorizing the Atlantic, sinking American supply ships faster than we can build them. The Nazis have developed magnetic mines and torpedoes that can detect a ship's metal hull from miles away. American convoys are being decimated. Thousands of sailors are dying. The war in Europe hangs in the balance, and the U.S. Navy is desperate for any technological advantage that might turn the tide. This is the context in which Project Rainbow was born. The official story is simple. Project Rainbow was a research initiative to develop degaussing technology, a method of scrambling a ship's magnetic signature to make it invisible to magnetic mines and torpedoes. It's a well-documented, legitimate military technology. Ships during World War II were routinely fitted with degaussing coils. This part is absolutely true and not remotely controversial. But what if Project Rainbow was something else entirely? What if degaussing was just the cover story? What if the Navy, working with the most brilliant physicists in the world, attempted something far more ambitious and far more dangerous? What if they tried to make a ship completely invisible, not just to radar, to light, to reality itself? And what if they succeeded? In 1943, the U.S. Navy commissioned the USS Eldridge, a Cannon-class destroyer escort. It was one of hundreds of similar ships being built for the war effort. Hull number DE-173. Nothing special, nothing unusual, just another warship. Except the USS Eldridge was different. According to multiple independent sources, the Eldridge was selected for experimental modifications at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard. Huge electrical generators were installed throughout the ship. Massive coils of cable were wrapped around the hull. The ship's standard equipment was removed and replaced with experimental apparatus that no one outside the project could identify. Crew members who spoke about this later described the equipment as looking something from a mad scientist's laboratory. Generators humming with so much power that the air itself seemed to vibrate. Coils so large they took up entire sections of the ship. The official Navy records show that the USS Eldridge was commissioned on August 27, 1943, and spent September through mid-October on shakedown training in Bermuda. According to those records, the ship was never in Philadelphia during October 1943. Case closed. Nothing to see here. Except, those records don't match what dozens of witnesses saw with their own eyes. And official government records have been falsified many times, especially when it comes to classified military experiments. So let's look at what actually happened, according to the people who were there. Carl Meredith Allen was a merchant marine who served aboard the SS Andrew Forsyth, a Liberty ship that was docked in Philadelphia in October 1943. Allen later became the primary witness to the Philadelphia experiment, writing dozens of detailed letters describing what he saw. And before you dismiss him as a crazy conspiracy theorist, understand that Allen was a decorated seaman with an honorable service record. He had no criminal history,
no history of mental illness at the time of the alleged events. His story remained consistent across decades of telling it. He had nothing to gain and everything to lose by coming forward. Yet he insisted until his dying day that he witnessed the impossible. According to Allen's account, he was on deck of the Andrew Forsyth on October 28, 1943, when he saw the USS Eldridge surrounded by an eerie greenish-blue glow. The glow intensified. The air around the ship seemed to shimmer and distort like heat waves rising from hot pavement. And then the Eldridge vanished. Not slowly, not fading away. One moment it was there, the next moment it was gone. The space where the ship had been was empty, just water, as if the ship had never existed. Allen said he stood there in shock, unable to process what he'd just witnessed. Other sailors on his ship were equally stunned. They looked at each other, confirming what they'd all seen. A 300-foot warship had disappeared into thin air. But the story doesn't end there. It gets stranger, much stranger. Because at the exact moment the Eldridge vanished from Philadelphia, witnesses in Norfolk, Virginia, 200 miles away, reported seeing a destroyer escort materialize out of nothing in their harbor. The ship appeared in a flash of green light, stayed visible for approximately 15 minutes, then vanished again. Sailors at Norfolk Naval Station reported the sighting to their commanding officers. Some of those reports still exist in dusty archive files, though the Navy has never officially acknowledged them. When the Eldridge rematerialized in Philadelphia, the crew was in absolute chaos. Sailors stumbled off the ship, vomiting, disoriented, terrified. Some were screaming about seeing things that shouldn't exist, about watching the walls of reality peel back, about dimensions beyond our own. But the real horror was still emerging. Some crew members had been physically fused with the metal structure of the ship. One sailor was found with his hand embedded in a steel bulkhead, his arm disappearing into the metal as if the solid steel were liquid. Another was discovered on a deck level below where he'd been standing when the experiment began, his body partially merged with the ship's hull. Several sailors were found embedded in the deck itself, their lower bodies fused with the metal floor. Medical personnel who treated these men said their injuries were unlike anything they'd ever seen. Burns that didn't look like burns, tissue damage that seemed to occur at a molecular level, and the psychological trauma was even worse. Sailors babbling about seeing through the ship's hull, about watching their own bodies become transparent, about experiencing all of time simultaneously. Some never recovered their sanity. They spent the rest of their lives in psychiatric institutions, their minds shattered by whatever they experienced during those minutes when the Eldridge was outside normal reality. Now, I need you to pause and think about this for a second. If this story is just a hoax, if it's just the fabrication of one mentally ill witness, then why did the Navy respond the way they did? Why didn't they just ignore it? Why didn't they laugh it off and move on? Instead, they launched a decades-long campaign to discredit every single person who spoke about the Philadelphia experiment. They produced documents claiming the Eldridge was never in Philadelphia. They threatened witnesses. They classified files that should have been routine. They've spent 80 years and God knows how much money trying to convince the world this never happened. Why? What are they so afraid of? But before we dive deeper into the government cover-up, if you're finding this information shocking and want to discover more suppressed military experiments, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications right now. Because what I'm about to reveal next will make you question everything you've been told about government transparency. Stay with me. Let's talk about the science behind the Philadelphia experiment. Because this isn't magic, this isn't fantasy. The theoretical framework for making objects invisible, for manipulating space-time, for teleportation, all of it exists in legitimate physics. It's called unified field theory. And the father of unified field theory was Albert Einstein. In the 1920s and 1930s, Einstein was working on a theoretical model that would unify the fundamental forces of nature, electromagnetism and gravity, into a single coherent framework. He never published a complete unified field theory. The work was too complex, the mathematics too difficult. Or that's what we've been told. But what if Einstein did complete his unified field theory? What if he did figure out how to mathematically describe the relationship between electromagnetic fields and gravitational fields? And what if he shared that work with the US military during World War II? We know for a fact that Einstein worked as a consultant for the Navy's Bureau of Ordnance from 1943 to 1944. The Navy admits this. It's in their official records. They say he was working on theoretical research related to explosives and explosions, just bomb calculations, nothing exotic, nothing revolutionary. Does that sound like the best use of the greatest scientific mind of the 20th century? Einstein, the man who revolutionized our understanding of space, time, energy, and matter, and they put him to work calculating bomb trajectories? Or is that just the cover story for what Einstein was really working on?
According to Carl Allen and other witnesses, the Philadelphia experiment was based directly on Einstein's unified field theory.
The massive generators installed on the USS Eldridge created an extremely powerful electromagnetic field that surrounded the ship. This field was so intense, so precisely tuned that it actually warped the fabric of space-time around the vessel. By manipulating electromagnetic energy at sufficient intensity, the field created what physicists call a space-time bubble. Inside this bubble, normal physical laws were suspended. Light bent around the ship instead of reflecting off it, rendering it invisible. The ship's mass was temporarily disconnected from the surrounding gravitational field, allowing it to move through space without the normal limitations of distance and time. Now, you might be thinking this sounds like science fiction, but it's not. Modern physics absolutely supports the theoretical possibility of space-time manipulation through electromagnetic fields. The Casimir effect demonstrates that electromagnetic fields can produce measurable changes in space-time at quantum scales. The Alcubierre drive, a theoretical faster-than-light propulsion system developed by physicist Miguel Alcubierre in 1994, uses exactly this principle, creating a warp bubble in space-time through controlled energy fields. In 2012, NASA scientists at the Johnson Space Center announced they were seriously investigating warp drive technology based on these principles. The physics works. The question isn't whether it's possible. The question is whether the Navy figured it out 80 years ago and has been hiding it ever since. But here's where it gets truly disturbing. The Philadelphia experiment wasn't just about making a ship invisible. According to witness testimony and leaked documents, the experiment had horrifying, unintended consequences. When the massive electromagnetic field surrounded the USS Eldridge, it didn't just affect the ship, it affected the crew. Human beings are essentially bioelectric organisms. Our nervous systems run on electrical impulses. Our brains generate electromagnetic fields. Our hearts maintain their rhythm through electrical signals. Now imagine subjecting a human body to an electromagnetic field millions of times more powerful than anything ever generated before. What would happen? The sailors aboard the Eldridge found out. According to survivors, when the field activated, they felt their bodies becoming insubstantial, transparent. Some reported being able to see through their own hands. Others said they could see the internal structure of the ship, the wiring, the bulkheads. Everything became visible as if the physical matter were fading away. And some sailors, according to multiple accounts, simply disappeared. Not died, disappeared. They were standing there one moment and gone the next, vanished into whatever dimension the ship had been transported to. Their bodies were never recovered. They were listed as deserted, went AWOL, but their families insisted they would never have abandoned their posts. These men didn't desert. They were erased from reality. Other crew members experienced what witnesses called the freeze. Their molecules were scattered or rearranged by the field, and they became stuck, frozen in time and space. 2 sailors were later reported to have vanished while sitting in a bar in Philadelphia, terrifying their waitress, who watched them fade away right in front of her eyes. This phenomenon, whatever it was, didn't end when the experiment ended. Some crew members seemed to have been permanently altered by their exposure to the field. They would spontaneously become invisible or partially immaterial at random times, sometimes for hours. They couldn't control it. They couldn't stop it. Their atomic structure had been fundamentally changed by whatever happened on that October morning. Think about what this means. The Navy,
in their desperate attempt to gain a military advantage, subjected over 200 men to an experimental process they didn't fully understand. They turned sailors into guinea pigs for a technology that might violate the fundamental laws of reality. And when it went horribly wrong, when men started dying, going insane, or literally disappearing, did the Navy take responsibility? Did they help the survivors? Did they admit what they'd done? No, they covered it up. They classified everything. They threatened witnesses into silence. They destroyed careers and reputations of anyone who dared to speak the truth. And they've maintained that cover-up for 80 years. Now let me show you the evidence that proves this really happened. First, let's talk about Morris Jessup. Jessup was a respected astronomer and ufologist who published a book in 1955 called The Case for the UFO. In 1956, he received the first of many letters from Carl Allen describing the Philadelphia experiment. Jessup was skeptical at first. He thought Allen might be delusional. But then something extraordinary happened. In late 1955, the Office of Naval Research received an anonymous package. Inside was a copy of Jessup's book, extensively annotated in the margins with detailed commentary about the Philadelphia experiment, unified field theory, and government conspiracies. The annotations appeared to be written by 3 different people, discussing the experiment as if they had insider knowledge. Here's where it gets really weird. The Office of Naval Research, instead of ignoring this obvious crank material, took it seriously.
Very seriously. They invited Jessup to Washington to examine the annotated book. They asked him detailed questions about the Philadelphia experiment. And then they did something that makes absolutely no sense if this was all just a hoax. The Vero Manufacturing Corporation, a major defense contractor working for the Navy, produced 127 mimeographed copies of the annotated Jessup book. They distributed these copies to select military personnel and defense contractors. Why? Why would the U.S. Navy spend time and money reproducing and distributing an annotated conspiracy theory book unless there was something to it? Unless they wanted certain people to understand what had been achieved? Unless they were using this seemingly crazy conspiracy theory as a way to communicate classified information to cleared personnel? And then there's what happened to Morris Jessup. In 1959, just 4 years after receiving Allen's first letter, Jessup was found dead in his car from carbon monoxide poisoning. The official ruling was suicide. Jessup had supposedly killed himself by running a hose from his exhaust pipe into his car window. But people who knew Jessup said he wasn't suicidal. He was excited about his research. He was working on new books. He had everything to live for. And several witnesses reported that in the days before his death, Jessup told friends he was being followed, that he'd been receiving threats, that he'd uncovered something so big, so dangerous, that powerful people wanted him silenced. Was Jessup murdered? Did he know too much about the Philadelphia experiment? Was his death a message to anyone else who might think about going public with classified information? We'll probably never know for certain, but the pattern is clear. People who get too close to the truth about the Philadelphia experiment tend to have very bad things happen to them. Their careers get destroyed. Their reputations get smeared. Sometimes they end up dead under mysterious circumstances. Now let's talk about Edward Dudgeon. Dudgeon was an electrician in the U.S. Navy who served aboard the USS Engstrom, which was dry-docked in Philadelphia at the same time as the Eldridge. In 1994, Dudgeon came forward with his account of what he witnessed.
He confirmed that both the Engstrom and the Eldridge had classified experimental equipment installed. He described the equipment as powerful generators designed to create electromagnetic fields around the ships. And here's the key point. Dudgeon said the equipment was far more sophisticated than simple degaussing apparatus. It was something else entirely. Something he'd never seen before or since in his Navy career. Dudgeon's testimony is significant because he's not a conspiracy theorist, he's not trying to sell books or make money from the story. He's a credible witness with an honorable service record, corroborating the central claims of the Philadelphia experiment. And the Navy's response to Dudgeon was telling. They didn't thank him for clearing up a historical misconception. They didn't invite him to speak at naval history conferences. They ignored him, pretended his testimony didn't exist. Because acknowledging Dudgeon means acknowledging that something classified and experimental was happening in Philadelphia in 1943. And if you're still following along, if this investigation into one of the military's darkest secrets is fascinating you, make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because we're about to get into the aftermath of the Philadelphia experiment and why the technology they discovered might still be in use today. Don't miss what comes next. But the most damning evidence comes from the Navy's own behavior. Let's look at how they've responded to inquiries about the Philadelphia experiment over the decades. When researchers first started asking questions in the 1950s, the Navy's standard response was, "There's no such thing as the Philadelphia experiment. It never happened. The USS Eldridge was never in Philadelphia in October 1943. Case closed." But as more evidence surfaced, as more witnesses came forward, the Navy's story started changing. They admitted that experimental equipment had been installed on ships in Philadelphia. They admitted that Einstein had worked as a consultant for the Navy. They admitted that research into electromagnetic field manipulation was conducted during the war. But they maintained that nothing extraordinary happened. It was all routine degaussing research. The witnesses were confused. They misunderstood what they saw. Carl Allen was mentally ill. The whole thing is a hoax based on the ravings of one disturbed individual. Except Carl Allen wasn't the only witness. There were sailors on the Andrew Furuseth. There were personnel at Norfolk Naval Station. There were workers at the Philadelphia shipyard. There were medical staff who treated the Eldridge crew. All of these people saw something. All of them reported similar details. All of them described events that match Allen's account. And all of them were threatened, discredited, or ignored by the Navy. In 1996, the Office of Naval Research issued an official information sheet about the Philadelphia experiment. The statement said, ONR has never conducted investigations on radar invisibility, either in 1943 or at any other time. Which is technically true. The ONR wasn't established until 1946, 3 years after the Philadelphia experiment allegedly occurred. So they're using a bureaucratic technicality to deny involvement.
But the research was conducted, just not by an agency called the ONR. It was conducted by the Navy's Bureau of Ordnance, with Einstein as a consultant, at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard in October 1943, all of which is documented fact. The Navy also claims that the USS Eldridge's complete war diary and action reports, available on microfilm, prove the ship was never in Philadelphia in October 1943. But here's the problem with that argument. Ship logs and war diaries can be falsified. It's not difficult. It's not unprecedented. Governments falsify records all the time when dealing with classified operations.
The Manhattan Project, the development of the atomic bomb, involved thousands of people and massive facilities, and the government successfully kept it completely secret until they decided to reveal it. Do you really think they couldn't falsify one ship's log to cover up a failed experiment? And think about this. If the Philadelphia experiment really was just a hoax, if it really never happened, then why is the Navy still, in 2024, releasing statements about it? Why do they maintain a dedicated information page on their official website specifically to deny the Philadelphia experiment? 80 years later, and they're still trying to convince people it didn't happen. Doesn't that seem like a strange amount of effort to debunk something that supposedly never existed? You don't see the Navy maintaining information pages denying that dragons attacked Pearl Harbor, because that obviously never happened. So why the continued obsession with denying the Philadelphia experiment? The answer is simple. Because it did happen. And they can't afford for people to understand what was achieved that day. Because the technology still exists, it's still classified, and it's probably still being used. Think about the military applications of a working teleportation system. Imagine being able to move troops and equipment instantly across any distance. No need for transport planes, no need for ships, no supply lines to be attacked, just instant deployment anywhere in the world. That's not just a military advantage, that's total military dominance. Do you really think the government would reveal that capability? Or would they keep it secret, deny it exists, and discredit anyone who gets too close to the truth? Let me tell you about Project Montauk. In the 1980s, multiple witnesses came forward claiming that the Philadelphia experiment had been perfected and was being used at Camp Hero, an abandoned Air Force base in Montauk, New York. According to these witnesses, the military had learned from the mistakes of the Philadelphia experiment. They'd refined the technology. They'd figured out how to safely transport humans through space-time without the horrific side effects that plagued the Eldridge crew. And they were conducting secret experiments in time travel, teleportation, and psychological warfare. Now, is Project Montauk real? Is it another elaborate hoax? Or is it the continuation of the research that began in Philadelphia in 1943? I don't know. But I do know that Camp Hero exists. I know that it was home to the SAGE radar system, one of the most powerful radar installations ever built. I know that the facility was supposedly decommissioned in 1981, but locals report seeing strange lights, hearing bizarre sounds, and witnessing military activity there for years afterwards. And I know that everyone who's tried to investigate Camp Hero has been turned away, threatened, or had their research confiscated. So here's what I think really happened. I think the Philadelphia experiment was real. I think the Navy, working with Einstein and other top physicists, developed a working electromagnetic field generator capable of warping space-time. I think they tested it on the USS Eldridge in October 1943. I think it worked, but with catastrophic side effects on the human crew. I think the Navy immediately classified the entire project and spent the next 80 years denying it ever happened. And I think they've continued developing the technology in secret, learning from the Philadelphia experiment's mistakes until they perfected it. And that's why they can never admit the truth, because admitting the Philadelphia experiment happened means admitting they have technology that can teleport objects through space. It means they've had this technology for 80 years. It means admitting they've let over 200 sailors suffer horribly to test a technology they didn't fully understand. And it means revealing a military capability that gives them an insurmountable strategic advantage over every other nation on Earth. Think about what this means for you. Think about what else they might be hiding. If they can cover up the Philadelphia experiment for 8 decades, if they can discredit dozens of credible witnesses, if they can falsify official records and get away with it, what else are they lying about? What other revolutionary technologies exist in classified facilities? What other experiments have they conducted on unwilling subjects? What other secrets are they keeping from the American people? This is why it's so important that you verify this information yourself. Don't just take my word for it. Go look at the evidence. The FBI has released documents about the Philadelphia experiment under Freedom of Information Act requests. You can read them yourself on their official website.
Go research the USS Eldridge's history. Look at the inconsistencies in the official records. Read Carl Allen's letters. Study unified field theory. Talk to Navy veterans from that era and ask them what they know. The information is out there. It's been suppressed, scattered, hidden, but it's out there. And the more people who understand what really happened, the harder it becomes for them to maintain the cover-up. Here's what you can do right now. First, educate yourself. Learn about the Philadelphia experiment. Study the physics involved. Understand how electromagnetic fields can affect space-time. Look at the witness testimony. Examine the evidence with a critical eye. Satisfy yourself that this isn't just conspiracy theory, but documented historical fact that's been deliberately covered up. Second, share this information. Tell people about the Philadelphia experiment. Post about it on social media. Send articles to friends. Make sure this story doesn't die. Because the government's greatest weapon isn't denying the truth. It's making people forget. If nobody remembers the Philadelphia experiment, if it becomes just another forgotten wartime mystery, then they've won. But if millions of people know about it, if it becomes part of our cultural consciousness, then they can't suppress it anymore. Third, demand transparency from your government. File Freedom of Information Act requests. Contact your representatives. Make it clear that you want the complete, unredacted truth about the Philadelphia experiment. The sailors of the USS Eldridge deserve to have their story told. The families who lost loved ones deserve to know what happened. And the American people deserve to know what their government has been hiding for 80 years. The Philadelphia experiment isn't just a cool conspiracy theory. It's not just an interesting historical mystery. It's proof that our government has been lying to us for 8 decades. It's proof that revolutionary scientific discoveries are being kept secret to maintain military and political power. It's proof that individual human lives mean nothing to the military-industrial complex when measured against strategic advantages. And it's proof that no matter how impossible, how fantastic, how unbelievable something might seem, if the government denies it too loudly and for too long, there's probably truth behind the denial. On October 28, 1943, the USS Eldridge and its crew were thrust into a nightmare. They became test subjects in an experiment that violated the laws of physics. Some died, some went insane, some disappeared from reality entirely. And for 80 years, the U.S. Navy has pretended it never happened.
They've lied. They've covered up. They've destroyed evidence. They've ruined reputations. They've done everything possible to make sure the truth about the Philadelphia experiment stays buried. But it's not buried anymore. The truth is out there. The evidence exists. The witnesses have testified. And now you know. You know what they did. You know what they're hiding. You know that teleportation, invisibility, space-time manipulation, all of it is possible. All of it exists. They proved it in 1943, and they've been keeping it secret ever since. So what are you going to do with this knowledge? Are you going to forget about it tomorrow? Are you going to dismiss it as just another crazy conspiracy theory? Or are you going to demand answers? Are you going to spread the word? Are you going to make sure that the sailors of the USS Eldridge are finally remembered for their sacrifice? The choice is yours. But remember, once you know the truth, you can't unknow it. Once you've seen behind the curtain, you can't unsee what's there. The Philadelphia experiment happened. The technology exists. And your government has been lying to you for 80 years. Welcome to the truth. If this investigation has opened your eyes to what the military is really capable of, then subscribe to this channel right now and turn on notifications. Share this video with everyone you know. Leave a comment telling me what you think about the Philadelphia experiment. And most importantly, don't stop questioning. Don't stop investigating. Don't stop demanding the truth. Because the moment we stop asking questions is the moment they win. And we're not going to let them win. Not this time. The truth about the Philadelphia experiment is finally coming to light, and no amount of denial, no amount of cover-up, no amount of propaganda can stop it anymore. The sailors of the USS Eldridge will be remembered. Their story will be told, and the world will finally know what our government is capable of when they think no one's watching.